They say that after 60, life should start slowing down, but in reality, it usually gets even more complicated. People tell you to find a partner so you won't be alone, not to give up, that there's still time to start over. But no one warns you about the hidden cost: losing your peace, your independence, and in many cases, your dignity. At this age, mistakes are no longer measured in wasted years, but in the peace of mind that never returns. My name is Gabriel, and for over 15 years, I've studied and practiced Stoicism as a philosophy of life. I've guided hundreds of people in different countries who, like you, want to live with wisdom, with virtue, and above all, with courage. And I've seen how, in later life, many decisions are made out of fear of loneliness rather than from the clarity of self-respect. That difference is what separates a calm life from a life full of regrets. Today, I want us to go through 15 lessons of Stoicism and emotional intelligence that will show you why being in a relationship at 60 or 70 can be a big mistake if you haven't first put in order your inner peace, your boundaries, and your purpose. We're not going to talk about empty romantic notions, but about real, concrete issues: money, health, adult children, sexuality, loneliness, and freedom. Get ready, because what you'll discover may give you the courage to choose differently. Let's begin. Number 1. Your peace before a partner. When you reach 60 or 70, the most valuable thing you have isn't a bank account or a house. It's your inner peace. That deep silence that lets you sleep without restlessness. Enjoy a cup of coffee without hurry, read without interruptions, and set your own pace. The strange thing is that at this age, many people throw themselves into looking for a partner, thinking they'll find companionship, when in reality what they end up losing is exactly what took so long to build: serenity. And I ask you, does it really make sense to sacrifice your peace just to avoid being alone? Stoicism reminds us of something powerful. The only thing truly under your control is your mind, your choices, your way of interpreting what happens. But if you invite someone into your life who brings chaos, that power fades. You can't control their character, their traumas, their habits, their family, their routines, or how they deal with aging. And yet, you cling to the illusion that love fixes everything. Love is beautiful, but it doesn't pay the price of your calm. Let me suggest a premeditatio malorum exercise, that Stoic habit of anticipating what could go wrong. Picture a relationship that seems good at first, but little by little arguments start over things as small as meals, the order of the house, unexpected visits from their children. Or think about those nights when you want silence and a book, but your partner wants the TV blaring until dawn. What once felt like companionship turns into an invasion of your most sacred time. I'll share something I saw up close. A woman, already retired, got married for the second time at 65. Her greatest fear was loneliness, and she thought he would be the solution. At first, everything felt new and comforting, but within months, he began criticizing her cooking, imposing his routine, and invading her space. She realized too late that she had given away what she loved most, the freedom to live peacefully. She ended up separating again, with more scars and less trust. That's the price of not valuing peace above a relationship. Now let's make this practical. Ask yourself, how many hours of peace do you gain each week with this person, and how many do you lose? If the balance tips toward loss, the answer is clear. It's not about whether the other person is good or bad. It's about the fact that your peace is priceless and should never be put at risk. Let me be clear. Love that compromises your peace isn't love, it's noise. At this stage of life, every minute of serenity counts more than any promise of companionship. Because without peace, everything else becomes irrelevant. And true loneliness isn't being without a partner, but losing yourself in someone else's presence. In the end, Stoicism teaches us something simple. Guard your mind as your most precious treasure. And remember, being with someone just to avoid being alone is the most expensive mistake you can make at this point in life. Number 2, loneliness is not failure. There's a deeply rooted belief that does more harm than good. that being alone at a certain age is a failure, as if your worth were measured by whether or not someone sits beside you at the dinner table. But tell me, isn't chosen solitude also a triumph? A triumph of having reached a point where you no longer need to beg for company to feel complete. I remember one random Sunday, years ago. I had no plans, no one at home. That familiar discomfort crept in. How strange to be alone on a Sunday. But as the hours passed, I discovered something different. I cooked my favorite meal without hurry, listened to the music I liked, not what I had to negotiate with someone else. I opened a book that had been waiting for months. That day, I realized solitude, when chosen, isn't punishment. It's a blessing. It marked a before and after in the way I am with myself. Emotional intelligence helps a lot in this area. First, through self-awareness, pausing to notice what you feel when you're alone, without judging, just naming it. Second, through self-care, creating small rituals that make your time with yourself sacred, from morning walks to journaling. And third, through cognitive reframing, turning I'm alone into I'm available for what truly nurtures me. That shift in words reprograms your mind to experience solitude from a whole new perspective. Here's a simple exercise. The companionship log. Track a full week and note which moments you enjoy most in solitude, which you prefer with friends, and which you truly value with family or a partner. You'll discover that nourishing solitude shows up more often than you thought. You just didn't recognize it before. From my experience, the people who suffer most from unwanted loneliness are those who never learn to be at peace with themselves. And the paradox is, when they enter a relationship, they often burden the other with an unfair demand. Make me happy, fill this emptiness. And what happens? More wounds are created because no one can carry an emptiness that's internal. Stoicism explains it clearly. It's not external things that disturb us, but how we interpret them. Being alone is not painful in itself. What hurts are the labels you attach to it. I'm invisible. No one loves me. I'm useless now. But those phrases are beliefs, not truths, and you can change them with practice, patience, and courage. Ask yourself this: what would you rather have? Chosen solitude that gives you freedom, or company that steals your peace? Because if you look at it clearly, solitude is never failure. Failure is not having learned to enjoy it. So next time someone says, "What a shame you're alone," smile inwardly. Because you know the real shame would be betraying yourself just to fill an empty space. Solitude, when honored, is not a void. It's fertile ground where your freedom is reborn. Number 3. Money sets the terms of the relationship. Few things create as much conflict in later life as money. And yet, almost no one wants to talk about it at the beginning of a relationship. People prefer the "we'll figure it out," as if love had the magical power to pay bills, cover pensions, and manage inheritances. But reality is harsh. Unresolved money issues end up being the silent knife that cuts ties. At this stage of life, finances aren't just numbers. They're also symbols of dignity, security, and respect. I've seen couples who seemed fine until the first argument about who pays for what, or when one started suspecting that the other wasn't looking for companionship, but for financial stability. And believe me, love mixed with suspicion of interest turns toxic very quickly. Let me suggest a practical idea: the peace budget. It means literally laying out on the table how much it costs to live, what income each person has, and which expenses are shared or individual. It's not about policing, but about clarifying. Because when accounts are clear, the heart rests. And when they're not, you get manipulations disguised as affection. If you love me, don't ask what I spend on. If you trust me, give me your card. Healthy love doesn't need to hide numbers. I remember a man who shared his story in a workshop. He was 72 and had started a relationship with a widow from his neighborhood. At first, everything flowed until she asked him to merge their accounts. He agreed out of trust, but within a few months realized his savings were being spent on things he neither approved of nor enjoyed. They ended up in a bitter separation. His words stuck with me. Losing the money didn't hurt me, giving it in exchange for mistrust did. It's also important to watch for warning signs. rushing to combine assets, avoiding the money talk, or economic dependence hidden behind romantic words. Don't ignore those signals. They're red flags telling you the path isn't safe. This is where Stoic prudence reminds us that external control is limited. You can't change how the other person handles their finances, but you can decide what agreements you set before taking irreversible steps. And those agreements don't kill romance. On the contrary, they make it more genuine because they eliminate suspicion. Before we wrap this up, let me pause to invite you to something important. If this topic resonates with you, please subscribe to the channel, give this video a like, and tell me in the comments what country you're watching from. I love knowing where this community is tuning in from because we're not alone. We're thousands learning together to live with wisdom, balance, virtue, and courage. Money sets the terms of a relationship because it places each person in their role without masks. It isn't the enemy of love. It's love's best ally when handled with honesty. And at this stage of life, the last thing you need is a financial war. What you need is peace, clarity, and agreements that protect what you worked so hard to build. Let's continue. Number 4, living together is not mandatory. There's an idea so ingrained it feels like law. If you're in a relationship, you have to live under the same roof. And I wonder, who on earth came up with that rule? As if love could be measured in square meters shared. But the truth is that at 60 or 70, when you already have your routines, your quirks, even your favorite chair, living together can turn into more of a battlefield than a romantic paradise. I've known couples whose relationships were saved precisely because they didn't live together. Each had their own home, their own space, and they visited on weekends. No fights over clutter, no arguments about the TV blaring late into the night, no unexpected drop-ins from kids or grandkids. This modern model, known as living apart together, is becoming increasingly common among older adults, though few admit it openly for fear of criticism. Let me share a story that seems simple, but carries a big lesson. She was 70, he was 68. Two people who had lived long enough to know what brought them peace and what stole it away. She loved the silence of the morning, that moment when coffee steamed and life seemed to slow down. He, on the other hand, needed music the moment he opened his eyes, as if melodies were the fuel that jump-started his inner engine. Their rhythms were opposite. She went to bed early, ending the day with a book or a prayer. He came alive at night, when the world went quiet, and inspiration arrived like a faithful guest. For a while, they tried living under the same roof. They hoped love would be enough to smooth over the differences, but reality was different. Small arguments, tense silences, reproachful looks. Living together, instead of uniting them, nearly destroyed them. One day, with more wisdom than fear, they made an unusual decision. Each would return to their own home, not out of lack of love, but out of respect for their own natures. From then on, they began meeting as if they were meeting life itself, with expectation, with desire, with joy. No more friction over routines, just gratitude for the time shared. Ironically, their relationship blossomed the moment they stopped forcing what wasn't natural. They discovered that living together isn't always necessary to love, that sometimes the real secret is in giving space, in not imposing, in understanding that freedom can also be a form of tenderness. Because in the end, love isn't about sleeping under the same roof. It's about recognizing each other without masks and choosing to meet again, over and over. Here, practical questions come into play. Are your sleep schedules compatible? Can you tolerate each other's habits, whether orderly or messy? What about pets, visits, grandkids dropping by unexpectedly? Those may seem like small details, but in daily life, they become mountains. If you're still unsure, try this: a 30-day cohabitation pilot, like test driving a car before buying it. Not to see if the other person loves you, but to see if you can keep your peace in their daily presence. Because infatuation can survive dinners and short trips, but everyday life demands patience and real compatibility. Stoicism reminds us not to confuse necessity with choice. Loving someone doesn't oblige you to sacrifice your habits, your space, your autonomy. Love can exist up close, but also at a healthy distance. So don't let social pressure drag you into believing, If you really love each other, you have to live together. No, if you really love each other, you'll find the way that preserves both of your peace. Because at this age, the true luxury isn't a shared house, it's the freedom to decide how you want to live love. Number 5. Boundaries from day one. One of the most common mistakes when entering a relationship later in life is thinking that there's no need to set boundaries anymore. That at this age, we should just understand each other without talking. But no, it's actually the opposite. When you reach 60 or 70, clarity is more urgent than ever. Your years of experience have already taught you that what isn't said in time ends up costing you dearly. Boundaries aren't walls to keep people out. They're doors that protect what's yours. Your time, your energy, your health, your personal space, your routines. What happens when you don't set them? You already know. Arguments over unexpected visits, over money, over the interference of children or grandchildren, over constant calls during your rest hours. The problem isn't the partner. It's your lack of definition from the very beginning. I remember a conversation I witnessed between two older adults in a workshop I gave in Mexico City some years ago. She said, "I need my mornings in silence to read the Bible, but he talks non-stop from the moment he wakes up." And he replied, "I feel like if I don't talk to her, she doesn't love me." Neither of them was wrong. What was missing was a clear boundary. It was enough for her to say, "My quiet time is sacred. After that, we can talk as much as you want." And suddenly, both of them could breathe. There was no fight, only clarity. To keep it simple, you can use the traffic light method for boundaries. Green, flexible things you can give up without feeling invaded, like choosing a movie or changing a weekend plan. Yellow, negotiable issues, like visiting schedules or how often you call each other. Red, the non-negotiables, like your rest, your money, your privacy, or your personal purpose. The mistake is not marking those reds from the start, because when you do it too late, the other person feels betrayed. This is where Stoicism offers temperance, acting with calm and firmness, without anger or reactivity. Setting boundaries doesn't mean yelling or imposing, it means knowing who you are and what you need to be well. Temperance turns a no into an act of respect, not rejection. Do you see? Someone who truly cares for you won't be offended by your boundaries. They'll appreciate them because you're giving them a clear map of how to love you. On the other hand, someone who gets upset by your boundaries is already showing you they're not interested in your peace, only in their own convenience. So don't be afraid to say from day one, this yes, this no, this we'll talk about. Don't see it as harshness, see it as the purest act of self-love. Because a relationship without boundaries is like a river that's overflowed. It sweeps everything away in its path. But with clear boundaries, that river flows, nourishes, and gives life. Number 6. Close, unresolved grief. One of the biggest mistakes when starting a relationship later in life is believing the past doesn't matter anymore. That's behind me, we often say. But the truth is, what isn't worked through gets carried along. Unresolved grief from divorce, widowhood, infidelity, or even unfulfilled dreams slips into a new relationship like silent ghosts. And sooner or later, those ghosts speak. I've met women who still secretly compare their new partner with the husband who passed away 20 years ago, and men who get angry with their new companion over wounds that actually belong to their ex-wife. The problem isn't the current partner, it's the emotional debts of the past that were never paid. And the most unfair part is that we make someone new carry pain that was never theirs. This is where Stoicism invites us to radical acceptance. The past can't be changed, but we can decide how we carry it. And emotional intelligence gives us a practical path. Name what you feel, honor what was, be grateful for what you learned, and release what no longer serves you. A very powerful technique is writing a closure letter. You don't send it to anyone. It's for you. In that letter, you can say to the person from your past, or to that earlier version of yourself, what you never expressed, and then say goodbye with dignity. I had to do this myself after a relationship that marked me in my youth. I realized that, even years later, I was still carrying anger and unanswered questions. One night I sat down to write. It wasn't a short note. It was pages and pages. I cried, I laughed, I got angry all over again. But when I finished, I felt a deep relief, as if I had finally closed a chapter that had been left silently open. Think about this. What scar do you still touch when no one is watching? What memory still brings you tears or rage? Those are signs of unresolved grief. Don't punish yourself for feeling it, but don't ignore it either. As long as you don't close it, it will keep stealing your peace in any new relationship. There's a verse in Ecclesiastes that has always stayed with me. There is a time for everything. A time to weep and a time to laugh, a time to mourn and a time to dance. Ecclesiastes 3:4. Grief isn't overcome by denying it, but by walking through it until it finds its rightful place in memory. So before opening the door to a new partner, open the box of your past and put things in order. It's not about forgetting, it's about releasing. Because only when you close those wounds with love and gratitude can you look at someone new without shadows behind you. And believe me, there's no greater gift for yourself and for the other than to begin clean, free of invisible chains pulling you back to yesterday. Number 7. Take care of your health first. One of the biggest traps in relationships at this stage of life is believing that love is enough to hold everything together. No, love doesn't cure diabetes, it doesn't replace the cardiologist, and it won't remind you to take your blood pressure pill if you don't do it yourself. In later life, health is the core of your existence. If your body isn't in order, sooner or later the relationship becomes a field of tension, because ailments end up draining patience, desire, and even the will to share. I've seen it over and over again. Someone enters a relationship full of hope, but soon arguments arise over food, over exercise routines one wants, and the other resists, over medical checkups one avoids. What started as companionship turns into emotional strain, because when energy is missing, tolerance disappears too. And at this point, what once seemed like a minor detail becomes a reason for separation. Stoicism reminds us there are things within our control and things outside it. And while you can't control every illness or the passage of time, you can decide what you do with your body each day, how you feed it, how much you move it, how well you listen to it. That's a personal responsibility you can't delegate, not to your partner, not even to your children or your doctor. Here's a practical exercise. Make a wellness agreement with yourself before making one with someone else. Ask yourself, what are my basic health routines? Am I willing to maintain them even if I'm in a relationship? Am I prepared to support the other person's routines without sacrificing my own? That agreement can include simple things like your sleep schedule, your daily walk, your diet, or even your regular doctor visits. Some years ago, I walked alongside an older friend facing a curious dilemma. He wanted to start a new relationship, but the woman he was interested in had completely different habits. He was disciplined about his health. She didn't want to hear a word about doctors or nutrition. In the end, he realized that beyond attraction, their paths weren't compatible because he wasn't willing to sacrifice his well-being just to fit in. It was painful, but it was wise. I also want to invite you to a brief breathing practice that the Stoics valued as a way to steady the mind. Inhale deeply to a count of 4, hold for 2 seconds, and exhale for 6. Repeat 3 times. You'll notice how even difficult decisions feel lighter when your body is calm. Remember this, your partner can join you at a checkup. They can support you through treatment, but they can't exercise for you or watch what you eat. That's your task. And if you don't prioritize your health, you're building a relationship on fragile ground, one that will eventually crack. In the end, what truly sustains a mature relationship isn't just love. It's 2 bodies and 2 minds that, despite their limitations, are cared for and respected. Because love can't do everything, but temperance, discipline, and mutual care can prevent much suffering. And at this stage of life, prevention is always wiser than regret. Number 8. Align with your adult children. Here we reach one of the most delicate points, children. When you decide to start a relationship at 60 or 70, you're not doing it on empty ground. Behind you, there's already a whole story, and in many cases, adult children and grandchildren who also have their opinions, even if you didn't ask for them. I know, it may sound uncomfortable, but if we don't talk about it, the conflict will eventually explode. I've seen cases where children react with jealousy, even if they don't say it outright. They're unsettled by the idea of someone new taking a place in your life. Others worry about money. They fear inheritances will change, or that a new partner will mean future burdens. And then there are those who, out of genuine love, fear you might get hurt. The problem is when all of these mix together and begin to pressure you until you start doubting your own decisions. I remember a woman who shared her story with me in a talk. She had been widowed for several years and began a relationship with a man her age. When she told her children, they reacted angrily. What's going to happen with the house? What if he only wants you for your pension? She, who at first was so happy, ended up feeling guilty about something that was good for her. Love became a kind of exam in front of her own family. This is where the Stoic principle of justice comes in, giving each one what belongs to them. Your children deserve respect, attention, and clarity, but your life is still your own. Explaining your decisions is one thing, handing them the steering wheel is another. Loving your children does not mean giving up your freedom. How can you do this in practice? First, speak clearly and without secrets. Introduce your partner if the relationship is serious. Make it clear that your financial matters are already settled and that your purpose is to live in peace, not to put at risk what you've built. Second, set rules of respect. Don't tolerate insults or invasions of your privacy. Third, keep separate times, moments only for your partner and moments only for your family. That separation of spaces avoids unnecessary friction. In the Bible, Jesus said something that resonates strongly here. A man will leave his father and mother and be united to his wife. Matthew 19:5. The message is clear. Every adult life needs its own space, free from invisible chains. In later life, this means you've already fulfilled your role as a parent. Now you have the right to your autonomy without guilt. So ask yourself, do you want your children to walk alongside you as allies in this new chapter, or to become judges of your happiness? The answer isn't simple, but it is necessary, because if you don't align expectations from the beginning, family conflict can end up destroying not just your relationship, but your inner peace. In the end, remember, loving your children and respecting your freedom are not opposites. They are two acts that can coexist if you speak clearly and stand firm. Your children have already lived their lives. Now it's your turn to live yours. Number 9. Mature sexuality without masks. Talking about sexuality later in life is often treated as a taboo, as if desire, tenderness, or passion suddenly vanished after a certain age. Nothing could be further from the truth. At 60 or 70, sexuality doesn't disappear. It transforms. The mistake is trying to live it by the same rules you had at 20 or 30, comparing what is no longer with what you think it should be. That's where frustration and silence begin. I've heard many people share how uncomfortable they feel at this stage, some because they fear their bodies are no longer attractive, others because they believe they must perform as they once did. The truth is that mature desire has a beauty of its own, slower, more intimate, more mindful. It's not about quantity or performance, but about the quality of presence, being fully in the moment, without masks, without pressure. I remember reading a book years ago on the psychology of aging. The author said that sexuality in old age is like a fine wine. It no longer needs hurry because time has given it depth and richness. That metaphor stayed with me. From then on, I understood that later in life, it's not about doing more, but about feeling better. This is where emotional intelligence plays a huge role. Talking with your partner about your fears, your fantasies, and your boundaries opens the door to trust. Are you insecure about your body? Say it. Do you need a different pace? Express it. Do you want more tenderness than passion? Admit it. Because what isn't spoken turns into a barrier. And in intimacy, silent barriers weigh more than any wrinkle. I've also seen how people free themselves when they stop imitating the ideal sex life sold by the market and create their own definition of pleasure. Sometimes it's taking a nap together in an embrace. Sometimes it's rediscovering the power of touch. Other times it's exploring new ways of intimacy without obsessing over youthful standards. There is no single right model. The right one is the one that makes you feel alive, without guilt. Stoicism reminds us of temperance, not being carried away by excess nor falling into repression. A healthy, mature sexuality is tempered. It doesn't need to prove anything, but it also doesn't deny the natural joy of living in a body. It's accepting that desire is still vital energy, even if it takes a new form. Ask yourself this: are you living your sexuality from a place of freedom or from a place of shame? Because yes, the body changes, but the ability to love tenderly and to enjoy closeness never goes away. What changes is the lens through which you allow it. So let go of the masks and the impossible standards. Live your sexuality as a slow, intimate, authentic art. Because at this age, more than ever, eroticism isn't about impressing. It's about sharing, without fear, who you truly are. Number 10. Don't make yourself dependent. Emotional dependency is a slow poison, and in later life it can be even more dangerous. When you've already lived 6 or 7 decades, some people believe a partner should become the center of everything, the only support, the only company, the only reason to get up each morning. But tell me, isn't that too much weight to place on someone else's shoulders? And worse still, isn't it too big a risk for your own stability? I've seen how dependency begins with small gestures, setting aside a hobby because your partner doesn't share it, canceling plans with friends because I'd rather stay with him or her, feeling anxious if they don't call within a couple of hours. What looks like a detail becomes a habit, and suddenly your life no longer revolves around you but around someone else. That's not love. It's fear disguised as love. Stoicism has a brutally clear teaching. True freedom comes from inner self-sufficiency. Marcus Aurelius said the soul becomes invincible when it is enough for itself. If your joy depends on another person's mood, words, or presence, you become a slave. And in later life, that slavery is twice as dangerous because the fear of loneliness can make you accept harmful relationships just so you won't be left without a crutch. I like to use a simple analogy. A partner can be an emotional crutch that supports you, but they should never become your legs. A crutch helps you walk, but if you hand over your legs, you stop being yourself. And when that happens, any stumble in the relationship knocks you down completely. I want you to watch for warning signs in your own life. Have you abandoned activities that once brought you joy just to please your partner? Do you struggle to spend a full day alone without feeling empty? Do you feel that your well-being depends almost entirely on your partner? If you answered yes, it's time to reclaim your ground. How? By reclaiming your own projects. Dedicate full days to yourself. Nurture friendships. Learn something new. Rediscover what excites you. Healthy interdependence arises from two complete people who choose to walk together, not from two fearful halves clinging to each other out of need. I had to learn this myself some time ago. At one point in my life, I realized I was paying too much attention to someone else, adjusting my days just to fit into theirs. Until one day, looking in the mirror, I asked myself, when did I stop being the main character in my life to become a supporting role in theirs? It was a harsh blow, but a necessary one that helped me greatly back then. So at this stage of life, don't confuse love with dependency. A partner can be company, support, tenderness, but they should never be your oxygen. If you don't know how to breathe on your own, any bond becomes a prison. And at 60 or 70, the last thing you need is another cage. You deserve shared freedom, not chains disguised as affection. Number 11. Prioritize your support network. One of the biggest traps when entering a relationship later in life is believing that your partner should become your everything, your best friend, your confidant, your nurse, your leisure companion, even your therapist. The truth is, no relationship can carry that much weight without breaking. At 60 or 70, your support network is as important as your health. Those friends, family members, neighbors, and communities are the ones who will sustain you when your partner can't or when they're no longer there. I've seen many people who, when they fall in love again, slowly begin to isolate themselves. They stop calling their friends, no longer take part in community activities, abandon their reading groups, prayer circles, or walking clubs. At first, they do it because the novelty consumes them, but over time they find themselves depending on just one person. And when that relationship wears out or ends, they realize they've been left alone without the network they once had. Here's a practical exercise: the connection map. Take a sheet of paper and write your name in the center. Then draw circles around it with the people and groups that support you. Close friends, trusted neighbors, activity companions, family you share with. When you look at that map, you'll notice two things. First, how many real supports you have beyond your partner. Second, which areas are empty and need strengthening. Stoicism reminds us of the virtue of justice, giving and receiving from others in balance. A healthy community doesn't just support you, it also invites you to support others. When you share your time, your experience, or simply your listening ear, you're not only helping, you're also strengthening your own dignity, because you know you are worth more than the role of partner. You are valuable as a friend, as a guide, as a person who still has much to give. I learned this lesson in an unexpected way. During a difficult period of my life, it wasn't my partner who sustained me, but my friends and a couple of neighbors who, without being asked, showed up with practical help and genuine companionship. That's when I understood. Romantic love can be a wonderful gift, but it should never replace the richness of a living community. You can also create a simple weekly connection plan. Schedule at least one interaction with someone outside your partner: a long phone call with a friend, a walk with a neighbor, an afternoon of volunteering. These small gestures keep your network alive and remind you that you don't depend on a single bond to feel accompanied. Ask yourself, are you building your life around one person or around a community? The difference is huge. A partner can be part of your life, but your support network is what holds you when life gets steep. Loving someone is wonderful, but never at the cost of cutting your ties to others. At your age, a strong support network is the best insurance against loneliness and the best defense against the mistake of believing a partner is everything. Number 12, respect your purpose. There's a question that rarely gets asked when someone enters a relationship at 60 or 70. What happens to your purpose? Yes, that dream, that calling, that activity that still gives you energy and direction. Sometimes it's writing a book, other times tending a garden, painting, teaching, studying, traveling, or simply living calmly with personal projects that inspire you. The problem is, when you lack clarity, the relationship risks absorbing you, and you end up forgetting what truly made you feel alive. I remember a 71-year-old man who once told me, "I got married again, and little by little stopped going to my carpentry workshop. Now I feel like I live for her routine, not mine." His words reveal a common mistake: giving up your own purpose just to fit into someone else's world. And instead of adding, it ends up subtracting vitality. Stoicism teaches that a good life isn't measured by how long it lasted or how many loves it held, but by whether it was lived with virtue and direction. Purpose is that compass reminding you why it's worth getting up each day. If you abandon it, you become a spectator of someone else's life, losing the meaning of your own. Here's a simple but deep exercise. Visualize your ideal mornings. Imagine what a perfect day would look like if you didn't have to please anyone else. What would you do upon waking? What activity would fill you with energy? What small project would give you satisfaction? Write those answers down, then compare them with what you actually do today. If the gap is big, that's a clear sign your purpose is being pushed aside. A practical tool is to create a 90-day plan for your personal project. It doesn't matter whether it's big or small. What matters is reserving non-negotiable time for it. And here's the key. That time is not to be bargained with, not even for your partner, because it's your source of vitality. You can share it, but you cannot give it away. Years ago, I made the same mistake. During a relationship, I let go of my deeper reading habits because I was absorbed by daily routines. It cost me my inner peace. When I reclaimed that practice, I felt once again in charge of my path. That experience taught me that purpose isn't a luxury. It's a vital need, especially in later life. If you choose to be in a relationship, the challenge is for the other to respect your purpose and for you to respect theirs. It's not about competing. It's about walking in parallel, each with their own project, sharing what enriches both. Because when your purpose fades, the relationship loses its spark. But when both nurture it, the relationship flourishes with greater strength. So look at yourself honestly. Are you living your life with your own direction, or just orbiting around someone else? At this age, the last thing you should lose is your purpose. Because without it, any bond risks feeling empty, and with it, even solitude becomes fertile ground. Number 13. Spot manipulation early. At this stage of life, few things hurt more than realizing too late that someone was manipulating you. Because at 60 or 70, mistakes are no longer measured in years you can get back, but in peace, you'll never recover. And manipulation doesn't enter your life with a bang. It slides in quietly, disguised as affection, care, or sweet words. Think about these warning signs. Someone who rushes to formalize the relationship as if time were running out. Someone who constantly plays the victim, making you feel guilty if you don't give in to their whims. Those subtle jealousies masked as, "I just care about you," which end up restricting your friendships and your freedom. Then there's the well-known gaslighting, making you doubt your memory, your judgment, even your sanity. None of that is love, it's control. I remember a woman from Peru who wrote to me. She told me her partner always said, "If you love me, you wouldn't go out with your friends." At first, she took it as a sign of affection, until one day she realized she no longer had a social life. She was isolated, dependent, and afraid. It took her years to recognize the manipulation, but leaving it behind gave her back a freedom she had forgotten. This is where Stoic prudence becomes essential. The Stoics teach us to observe facts, not just words. Ask yourself, does what they say match what they do? Do they take responsibility for their mistakes, or do they always blame others? When they hurt you, do they repair it, or do they justify it with excuses? These questions are like a lighthouse that illuminates what otherwise looks confusing. Here's a small verification script you can use whenever you're in doubt. First, observe the fact. What was said, what was done. Then, check for consistency. Do they act the same with others? Next, assess responsibility. Do they own up to mistakes? And finally, look for repair. Do they do anything to make it right? If they fail at all these steps, beware, you're facing manipulation. Over the years, I've learned that love never requires blindness. Healthy love invites you to see clearly, not to cover up what's obvious. If staying in the relationship means closing your eyes and swallowing excuses, what you're holding on to isn't love, it's fear. So ask yourself plainly, do I feel freer, fuller, more at peace with this person, or do I feel limited, guilty, and confused? You already know the answer, even if it hurts. And at this stage of life, better a short pain from saying no in time than a long suffering from staying in the hands of someone who only wanted control. True love never demands your blindness. Someone who truly cares for you won't fear your clarity. They'll celebrate it. Because only a bond that survives the truth is one worth keeping. Number 14. Protect your legal and financial matters. Here we reach a subject many prefer to avoid because it feels uncomfortable to discuss. Yet it defines the peace of your coming years. Legal and financial protection. In later life, it's not enough to feel love or trust someone's words. You need documents, agreements, and clarity. Not doing so is like leaving your front door wide open and hoping no one walks in. Naive and risky. I've seen entire families fall apart because a new marriage didn't clarify inheritances, because there was never a discussion about separating assets, or because no clear will was left. What began as a love story ended in lawsuits, resentment among children, and battles that could have been avoided with a couple of uncomfortable conversations. Stoicism reminds us of the importance of foresight, to accept what life may bring, but also to prepare with prudence. And in this case, prudence means legal prevention. What does that look like? Making clear how assets, accounts, properties, and even future care in case of dependency will be managed. A 74-year-old woman once told me in a talk that after being widowed she remarried, but never discussed wills or assets with her new husband. When he passed away, his children and hers went into a legal war that drained her emotionally and left her with a reduced pension. Her words stuck with me. It didn't hurt to lose money. It hurt to know that foresight could have prevented all that pain. How can you protect yourself? Use a simple checklist: updated will, written agreements on cohabitation, clear separation of assets, powers of attorney in case of illness, and a designated person to handle your care if you can't decide for yourself. These steps don't kill romance. On the contrary, they protect it from suspicion and misunderstanding. Proverbs offers wisdom that fits perfectly. The prudent see danger and take refuge, but the simple keep going and pay the penalty. Proverbs 22:3. Leaving legal and financial matters to chance is closing your eyes to danger. Prudence is an act of love, toward yourself and toward everyone involved. I learned this lesson when I accompanied a friend through an inheritance process. It was painful to see how siblings who once loved each other deeply ended up estranged because their father left nothing in writing. That experience made me promise myself that when the time comes, I'll leave my papers in order. Because there's no greater legacy than peace among your loved ones. So don't fool yourself. Foresight is not coldness, it's wisdom. A couple that respects each other should talk about the uncomfortable things before they turn into tragedy. True love doesn't fear clear agreements. It's grateful for them because trust rests there. Protect your legal and financial matters, not as an act of distrust, but as the most mature way of safeguarding the love and peace you hold dear. Because when everything is in order, your heart can rest without fear of tomorrow.